Pokemon Scarlet and Violet Teal Mask DLC added a ton of returning Pokemon and some new Pokemon to the competitive metagame, and I'm here to tell you how good everything is. Keep in mind this is just my initial impressions, but I've been playing for a long time, so they should be more or less accurate, though of course I'll make mistakes. Starting off with Arbok. Arbok, not the best Pokemon by any means. We're gonna put it in the D tier. I was telling this on stream, but I actually like Arbok. It was the first Pokemon I bred competitively in Pokemon X and Y because I really thought it was gonna be good. So I have actually used it before. It's got a good ability and poison isn't a bad typing, but its move pool is actually okay, to be honest, but its stats are just really bad. It makes it very difficult to use. I don't think I have to convince anyone that Arbok is bad. Next up is Alolan Sandslash. This is better than regular Sandslash, but it's still not very good, to be honest. The thing is that it just doesn't hit that hard. That being said, with the changes to the ice typing and like maybe terrestrialization helps it because it has like a couple 4x weaknesses to fire and fighting, maybe it could be better. I'm gonna put this in C tier. This is actually very generous. I'm sure this thing is really bad, but I don't know. I feel like it's worth giving it a chance. So I'm gonna put it in C tier. If it's C tier, it might be a low C tier, or like it probably belongs high D tier, but I'll give it a shot. Regular Sandslash, completely no redeeming features. The pure ground typing doesn't help it. I don't know if actually they have the same stats, but it feels like Alolan Sandslash has better stats. That might just be because Steel and Ice are better offensive types. One thing about Alolan Sandslash that is different than regular Sandslash is that Steel typing is actually pretty nice offensively. You can hit Chien-Pao, Fluttermane for super effective damage. Ice typing hits Landorus, Amoonguss, Rillaboom, Ogerpon, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So anyway, regular Sandslash a lot worse. Alolan Sandslash probably still bad, but definitely better. Clefable, I'm gonna put in the B tier. Follow Me is very good, and we do not currently have Togekiss, who is kind of one of the more or at least in the past was one of the more popular Follow Me users. Clefairy isn't on this list, though it's actually typically considered better than Clefable because of the Eviolite item and because of the Friend Guard ability. So Clefairy I would probably put in the, like, it's higher than Clefable. It's either high B or low A. Clefable will put in the B tier. Not a bad Pokemon. It's typically not really thought of as bulky enough to really be a huge consideration. But I mean, Follow Me is a very broken move. So Clefable B tier, Clefairy either high B or low A. Now, as many of you know, I went to the Pokemon World Championships recently in Japan, and I was there for a whole month. It was an amazing experience, and I made so many great memories. But a few times I ran into a problem. Now, I consider myself on the whole to be a pretty chill guy, but one of my biggest pet peeves came up a couple of times, unfortunately, while I was traveling in Japan and I got caught in the rain. Wet socks. I hate wet socks. And when you're out and about in a new country and exploring, it might be hours until you can get back to where you're staying so you can change them. Which is why I was extremely excited when Vessi, the sponsor of today's video, reached out. Vessi makes shoes that are 100% waterproof without sacrificing comfort. Imagining how much easier those rainy days would have been if I'd had Vessi makes me shed a tear in sheer joy. And since their shoes are so comfortable and flexible, I know I won't be upset even if the weather doesn't try and rain on my parade. So if you want to be both fashionable and dry, head to vessi.com/WolfeyVGC and use code WolfeyVGC for 15% off your order. Alolan Ninetales. So Alolan Ninetales, I'm going to put in the A tier. I'm really interested in this Pokemon. Alolan Ninetales has been like, I would say it's been okay over the years. It was pretty good in 2017, but the power level is a lot lower, and it really hasn't seen that much play outside of 2017. But the thing is that with the buff to the snow weather condition from the change from hail to snow, I think that Alolan Ninetales could actually be a lot stronger personally. It's now a lot tankier and it has access to terrestrialization, which its defensive typing isn't that good, but its offensive typing is pretty nice. So it actually benefits immensely from terrestrialization. Aurora Veil is just also a really broken move, and Snow being better not only helps Alolan Ninetales, but it also helps other ice type Pokemon. And so like we saw like some Abomo Snow Iron Bundle. I wonder if we'll see like Alolan Ninetales Iron Bundle, stuff like that. I think that this has a lot of potential. And I think it's actually a pretty good mon. So I'm going to put it in the A tier. I would not be surprised to see this Pokemon win a tournament. Regular Ninetales, I'm feeling generous to Pokemon in general here. I'm going to put regular Ninetales in the B tier. It's not a great Pokemon by any means. It's slower than Alolan Ninetales, and it's set up to sun condition rather than snow. But the thing about regular Ninetales is that there's a whole lot of Pokemon that benefit from photosynthesis, and Ninetales is one of I guess 2 Pokemon with the drought ability in the game, the other being Torkoal, and Torkoal's so slow it kind of forces you to do certain things. So I think that there's probably a world where you can run like regular Ninetales with maybe Helping Hand, and like, I don't know, choice Specs Fluttermane and activate, like give it both a speed and a Specs boost, or give it a Specs boost and a like a Photosynthesis special attack boost and Helping Hand. I don't know. I think that it has like some interesting things that you can do with it, and it also enables certain other Paradox Pokemon as well, like Roaring Moon, for example. So I don't want to rule it out by any means. Overheat is a strong move. Will-O-Wisp is a good move. Helping Hand is good. Solar Beam is good. You could do it with like Dipplin and use Hypnosis if you wanted. I don't know. I don't think it's like the strongest Pokemon ever, but I certainly think it's worth considering. Poliwrath, I'm going to put in the D tier. I don't think Poliwrath is very good at all. Yeah, like its stats just aren't there. It kind of needs to be used in rain. It has Belly Drum, but it's more of a gimmick than anything else. It has Water Absorb and Damp as well, but yeah, it's just not a very good Pokemon by any means. I don't think I need to harp on this. Victory Bell is actually better than it looks, because Victory Bell is the Chlorophyll ability and can actually hit pretty hard. I'm going to put it in the B tier as well. This is a little bit generous, but I think like we don't currently have Venusaur in the game, so having a Pokemon that has Chlorophyll and Sleep Powder, there is Hisui and Lilligant, however, and regular Lilligant, but Victory Bell is more of an offensive Pokemon. It can do stuff like Leaf Storm, Weather Ball, Sleep Powder, Protect is a good set. It also has Sludge Bomb. Poison is a pretty good offensive type to hit grass types, especially now that Rillaboom is more popular. Having a 4x resistance to Grassy Glide is pretty nice. I think it gets Strength Sap as well, though you wouldn't normally use it on Victory Bell, but it is an option. So I don't think Victory Bell is going to be like meta defining by any means, but I think that like on a Sun team, it is worth considering, especially if you're not running Torkoal. One of the main reasons to run Lilligant or Hisuian Lilligant is access to the move After You, which allows you to do stuff like Torkoal, Lilligant, and After You Eruption. But if you want to do something like Ninetales, then, or even like Manual Sun, you can benefit a lot more from a Pokemon like Victory Bell because it just hits harder in my experience. Golem, D tier. I don't see a Alolan Golem on this list. It's also D tier. Not a good Pokemon by any means. In fact, very, very, very bad. Iconic, yes. Good, no. Dipplin. Okay, Dipplin. So Dipplin is tricky. I don't entirely know where to rank it. It has a lot of things going for it. A lot of people seem to think that it's very, very bad because its amazing abilities, Super Sweet Syrup, I think is what it's called. Its amazing ability does not work multiple times per game. It is only the first time that it switches in. That is something that is kind of a big problem for it. You can only lower the evasion of your opponent's Pokemon one time during the battle. That being said, it's still interesting typing. Syrup Bomb is still a really good late game cleanup move. It still has moves like Pollen Puff and Leaf Storm and Draco Meteor. So I'm going to put it in the B tier. I think it's probably not worse than like Victory Bell or Clefable or Ninetales. This might be a little generous, but I don't know. I think that I think it's worth considering at the very least. I don't think that without having like tested extensively, I should be putting it in the C tier. Poltergeist. Okay, no, Sinistcha. I always call this one Poltergeist. I don't know why. Sinistcha. Okay, Sinistcha, I'm putting in the A tier. And actually, it probably doesn't belong in the S tier, but it might. I've played a couple games of this thing, and I think it is extremely powerful. I think it is the most underrated Pokemon in the DLC right now. I think it is most underrated new Pokemon at the very least. I think it is very, very, very powerful. Grass and Ghost typing is good. I like Grass and Ghost typing. It has a number of useful resistances as well as a couple immunities, which is useful. Its signature move is Broken, a spread move that is both Giga Drain and Scald. That's very, very good. But it gets moves like Rage Powder. It also gets Strength Sap. It also gets Trick Room. It's just so good on so many ways. And the stats aren't bad either. You can EV it to be pretty tanky. And then if you EV it defensively, you still have a pretty decent special attack stat because the base special attack is so high. So I think this thing is incredibly powerful, and I think it's very underrated right now. Also, the ability is just straight up broken. Hospitality is unbelievably good. So yeah, I really like this Pokemon. I think that it is like high A. I could see it winning big events. Like if Alola Ninetales, I think, could win a regional, I would say that Sinistcha could win a national. Okie dokie. I don't really know where to rank this thing. Like, my initial impression is that it's not great. I think I'm gonna put it in the B tier. I want to believe in it, and I think that it has some things going for it, but my initial thought is just that it doesn't look very good to me. The defensive typing is pretty bad. The offensive typing isn't great either. The ability is okay. Guard Dog is not bad because it prevents you from being intimidated, but yeah, I don't know. I just don't really think it's that good. We already have Toxicroak, who's immune to water moves, which is pretty valuable, to be honest. And Toxicroak didn't see any play despite being really strong into Urshifu, and it actually pretty decent into Chen Pao as well. I feel like it's hard to justify a fighting type that isn't Iron Hands right now, personally. It has some stuff going for it, so I don't want to completely write it off, but I also don't think that it's super, super strong, to be honest. Monkey Dory, I'm going to put this in the C tier. It has some stuff going for it, but I like the typing even less than I like Okidogi, and it's a lot frailer, and it's too slow to keep up with the current threats in the metagame. Like, basically, it's really frail, but it's also slower than, like, Chen Pao, Fluttermane. I think it's slower than Ogerpon as well. I don't think it's faster than it. So it's not like that fast. Its special attack is good, but it's like not so good that it's like blowing you out of the water. And its defenses are pretty like mediocre to bad. So, and its like defensive typing isn't that good. Its offensive typing also isn't that good because it can't hit steel types with psychic and poison. So I would love to be proved wrong about this thing. I don't think that this is like certainly doomed by any means, but I don't think that this thing is super good. Pheasantipity. I'm thinking this might be a hot take. I'm putting this thing in A. I think of the loyal 3, Pheasantipity is the best, and that's in part because I found out that Toxic Chain appears to have a 30% activation condition, and Pheasantipity is very bulky and has multiple spread moves it can use, like Icy Wind and Dazzling Gleam. So that means that it's a support Pokemon that can badly poison you every time it hits you with like Icy Wind or Dazzling Gleam, and I think that is very potent, especially when you consider how naturally tanky it is, and it has the best typing of the 3. Fairy and Poison is certainly the best typing of the 3 of them. So relative to the other mons in the DLC, I think Pheasantipity is one of the stronger ones. I don't think it's broken by any means, but it has Tailwind, it has Roost, it has Icy Wind, it has Play Rough, it has Dazzling Gleam, it has a number of ways that like can make it annoying. You can run it with Grassy Seed, you can run it with Leftovers, you can run it with Citrus Berry. I think that it's an interesting Pokemon that is probably being like underestimated right now, and I think that it's pretty good, to be honest. Okay, now we get into Ogerpon. Let's do the easy ones first. This is S tier. This is S tier. I think this is probably S tier as well. And you know what? I think that I'm going to put them all in S tier, to be honest. I think that like this Pokemon seems very good. Probably the best Pokemon in the DLC, to be honest. I think that this thing is incredibly powerful. Not even if it just had the grass form, right? It has Defiant, it can hold an item, and it gets a speed boost when it terastallizes. Very strong. Not to mention it has Ivy Cudgel, which is 100 base power, 100% accurate grass move, and Follow Me and Spiky Shield and Taunt and Knockoff and all these other coverage moves. Incredibly good Pokemon. 110 base speed, not too frail, high base attack, super strong. But then you throw in the fact that it can get all these different abilities like Mold Breaker and Water Absorb. Sturdy's not as good, but it gets Sturdy. And the fact that each of these like different types can also get a different boost when they terastallize, which means you can customize them to be exactly what you want. Okay. Then I found out that apparently if it's holding one of the other masks, all of its moves get a 20% damage boost, which is absurd. That makes Ivy Cudgel a 120 base power move before applying Stab with no drawback, which is broken for the record. Like that is actually unbelievably broken, and it's for all the moves. The Woodhammer gets a boost, Hornleaf gets a boost. You can run like so many different coverage moves. You can run so many like different, you have so many different options with this thing. So it's really customizable. It can be bulky, it can be fast, it can be strong, it can hold an item, it can choose to hold one of the masks. I think this thing is incredibly broken. I think it will be seeing a ton of play. I don't really have that much more to say about it. It's very strong, in my opinion at least. The fact that its Terra types are limited is like, it's not ideal, of course, but I don't think it's such a big drawback, especially given that you can get a boost when you terastallize, like a stat boost, which is not the case for any of the other Pokemon in the game. So Weezings, both Weezings are going in A tier for me. I'm so happy that Weezing is back. I have missed Weezing so much. There have been so many times throughout this year where if I just had a Weezing, I felt like I would have had the answer to my problems. I think Weezing and Galarian Weezing, incredible Pokemon, very well designed. I think that it really opens up your options in team building, having Weezing available. For example, Urshifu, like Weezing will give you the ability to not let it hit through Protect. Very valuable. Turning off Sword of Ruin, very valuable. Turning off Beads of Ruin, very valuable. You could do something like Rock type Ogerpon and have Weezing in the back, and if they have Tornadus, just switch in Weezing and just KO Tornadus before the speed boost, before Tailwind goes up, because you've turned off Prankster. Of course, that doesn't work if they're max speed, but maybe a better analogy. You could do like Regieleki Weezing or something, or Chen Pao Weezing. You could probably still KO Tornadus. So yeah, I think Weezing is really good. I'm really happy that it's back. I don't think people are underestimating it, but I think it will open up a lot of dimensions in ways other than like just the obvious like slaking Weezing, right? I think that it just opens a lot of doors just to have it on your team. So I'm really excited to use Weezing. I'm going to Snorlax in A tier as well. I want to put it in the S tier. Snorlax, for anyone who doesn't know, did dominate most of Sun and Moon's competitive formats and Ultra Sun and Moon's competitive formats. However, with the nerf to the Figgy, Iapapa Berry, etc., they were buffed from like very basically useless to hugely powerful. They would heal 50% going into Sun and Moon, and then they were nerfed to 33% in Sword and Shield, which is where they currently sit. So Snorlax like hasn't been as good since then, but I think Snorlax was also like not very good in Dynamax formats, to be honest. And so now that Dynamax is gone and it benefits a lot from the terrestrial phenomenon, I think that Snorlax is actually a major threat. I want to put it in the S tier. I'm going to be conservative and put it in the A tier. I think that people are sleeping on Snorlax, and Snorlax is going to be sleeping on them. So that's pretty much what I have to say about Snorlax. Furret, I'm putting in the C tier. It might be weird to put Furret in C with Monkey Dory. when there are Pokemon like Poliwrath in the D tier. But the thing is that Furret gets Follow Me, which is an incredibly powerful attack. So for that reason alone, I'm putting it in the C tier. It has something it can do. If you want to win with Furret, like you can probably do that. Superb Owl, I'm also going to put in the C tier. C tier is Pokemon that are bad and you probably aren't going to win anything with them, but like you could probably like make a funny team that would do okay with them. Superb Owl is a lot stronger than people realize, and one of the big reasons of putting it in the C tier is that flying is an incredible spot right now. There are so many good grass type Pokemon in the format. Well, there's not that many rock or steel types, or electric types for that matter. Only real electric type is Iron Hands, who doesn't even resist flying. So flying's in a really good spot right now, and Superb Owl being a flying type like makes it at least worth considering in the current format. Ariados, it gets Rage Powder, but I'm still putting it in D tier because that's a lot worse than Follow Me. Its stats stink. I don't have anything good to say about Ariados. It's just a bad Pokemon. It very much pains me to say this, but I cannot put Politoed any higher than the B tier. Politoed's one of my favorite Pokemon. I really like it. I've won tournaments with it before. I've brought it to a bunch of different tournaments in a bunch of different formats. I love this Pokemon. However, it received a major nerf coming into Scarlet and Violet, which is that it lost Scald. And that's a pretty big deal. Politoed, basically, what I like about it is it allows you to play bulky Rain. You have a Rain team, which, you know, normally is more geared towards offense, but Politoed is so bulky that it allows you to kind of play it as like a mode rather than being super committal to it. And it allows you to use more defensive, bulky Pokemon where they're still doing damage thanks to the Rain Boost, but they're also not glass cannons. And a big part of Politoed's success has been its access to the move Scald, which is 100% accurate, which is consistent damage, and it can burn. Losing Scald means that Politoed's now best water type option is like Hydro Pump, which is just significantly worse and kind of takes you away from using Politoed defensively. I really love Politoed. It gets access to Perish Song, which is why part of the reason why it's one of my favorite Pokemon. It gets Helping Hand, it gets Icy Wind, lots of good supporting moves, Encore. But at the end of the day, without a good consistent water type move, I just don't see it being very effective, to be honest. Like, it will get used and it will do decently well. I think Rain is still strong, but yeah, it's just not really worth noting. Gligar and Piloswine shouldn't really be on here. Let's just put them in D tier. Along with Mightyena. Mightyena, truly one of the worst Pokemon ever made. Now, I don't hate Mightyena. Actually, I mean, like, I love Gen 3, so like I have some fond memories of it, but it's just not good at all. I mean, even with Intimidate, it's just totally worthless. If this thing had like 100 more stats, that's like the threshold where it would like actually start to be considered useful. I'm honestly surprised they haven't given an evolution, especially after Linoone got an evolution. I feel like Mightyena's kind of overdue for an evolution. Yeah, I don't really have anything to say about it. It's really terrible. If you want to use it on your team, you're gonna have a bad time. Ludicolo, unfortunately, same issue as Politoed. It's going in the B tier. It's a little bit better, I think, like, because it has more offensive options you can use. Typical Ludicolo set is something with like Assault Vest, Fake Out. It used to be Scald, now it'll be Hydro Pump, Giga Drain, Ice Beam. It's not a bad Pokemon, but at the same time, like, without access to Scald, it just doesn't have a consistent water type attack. So if you want to do stuff like run a bulky Assault Vest Ludicolo, you can't really do that anymore. And betting on Hydro Pump is really scary. Like, I'm willing to bet that Helping Hand Hydro Pump, maybe with Life Orb or something on Ludicolo, can probably KO Fluttermane, but if you run Helping Hand Hydro Pump and you miss, you just lose immediately. Maybe you run like Politoed Ludicolo and then Dipplin so that you never miss Hydro Pump, but that seems kind of silly to me. So, I mean, I love Ludicolo, another one of my favorite Pokemon, but I just can't in good faith put it any higher without seeing how people are going to get around the accuracy issue. Shiftry. Shiftry's going in the B tier. I like Shiftry. I am really surprised to put it this high. It's always been a completely worthless Pokemon, but with the buff to Wind Rider, I think that it's actually now worth considering personally. I think that it's a broken ability. It's an incredibly good ability. I think putting it any lower would be underestimating the ability, and I think it allows Shiftry to actually make use of some of the other things that it has going for it, such as access to Fake Out and a pretty deep move pool. Yeah, I mean, I don't think Shiftry will be easily winning any tournaments, but I think that it could show up in a top cut somewhere. So, okay, Volbeat, this might be a hot take. I just had to do a little research, but Volbeat actually I'm going to put in the C tier, and that's because it gets an interesting supporting move pool. So it gets access to Tailwind, Prankster Tailwind. You wouldn't really want to use this over Tornadus, but there is something that you can do with Volbeat that Tornadus can't do, and that's the fact that Volbeat gets Tail Glow, which is one of the only moves in the game that raises a stat by 3 stages, increasing it by 250%. And it also gets Baton Pass. So you can do stuff with Volbeat like Tail Glow Volbeat and then Baton Pass. You could even substitute if you wanted and Baton Pass into something a lot stronger, like Fluttermane, for example, and then try and win the game from there. It's gimmicky at best. It's not consistent. You won't see this thing winning a tournament most likely. However, it is like a unique strategy, and because it gets Prankster, it's one of the only Pokemon in the game. I think it is the only Pokemon in the game that can pass such a significant stat boost. So yeah, so I think that it's worth mentioning here at the very least. Illumise does not get Tail Glow, so I'm putting it in the D tier. It has stuff that it can do, but for the most part, you'd prefer a support Pokemon with Prankster like like Tornadus. So I just don't feel like putting Illumise any higher. Crawdaunt, I'm gonna put it in the D tier. Crawdaunt, people love Crawdaunt for some reason. I don't really know why. It's not very good. It does hit really, really hard. I think it might be better in single battles, but it's so slow and so frail that in double battles, like, it just isn't good. Like, it just dies immediately. I remember actually looking into it because it was one of the few Pokemon that can Oko Cresselia back in the day with like adaptability, maybe Life Orb knockoff or something, or Crunch. I mean, yeah, like Cresselia can change their type now, like, and Crawdaunt probably won't make it that far in the first place, so I'm gonna put Crawdaunt in the D tier. Milotic I'm putting in the A tier. It's a good Pokemon. I used to use Milotic a lot. Yeah, I've used Milotic at several tournaments over the years. I've won a regional with it. I brought it to the World Championships. It's a good Pokemon, but I don't feel like it's an S tier Pokemon. The thing about Milotic is that it still gets access to Scald, which is a massive deal. If it didn't get Scald anymore, I would probably still put it in the A tier because it gets Muddy Water, which is on a Pokemon like Milotic okay, I think. However, the thing is that Milotic is really good because of its ability competitive, where if any of its stats are lowered, it gets a special attack boost. It's a really, really good ability, but you do kind of rely on your opponent giving you that boost to be exerting a lot of pressure. That being said, it has Recover, it has Icy Wind, it has Muddy Water, it has Scald. So, and it's very, very bulky. I think that this could be interesting against like Chen-Pao, Urshifu style teams because it's such a bulky Pokemon and Scald is so good against like Pokemon like that, and Icy Wind can break Focus Sash and lower speed. I don't know how well it benefits from the Terastallization, to be honest, but it certainly doesn't hurt it. I mean, a defensive Pokemon being able to change their type is really nice. The thing about Milotic is it typically just plays the game at a slower pace than a lot of players are having success with in Scarlet and Violet. So even though it's strong, like, it does have some issues. The only other thing worth noting is that in 2020, prior to the pandemic, some players saw some success with Milotic where they would use Coil to boost its defense and accuracy and then run Muddy Water and Hypnosis. I don't know if we'll see that again, to be honest. It was kind of a niche set. I always thought Scald, Icy Wind, Recover, Protect was more consistent, but I think it is worth noting at the very least that it is an option. So I think Milotic could win a tournament for sure, especially once Incineroar comes back, where, you know, in a couple months down the line where Intimidate becomes a lot more prevalent. But even right now, I think it's a good Pokemon. I don't think it's a great Pokemon. I think that it will definitely see some usage because the ability is so good. Chimecho, I love Chimecho. This is one of my favorite Pokemon of all time. D tier. Jirachi, not legal. Torterra. Okay, Torterra got a pretty massive buff in getting access to Shell Smash. And it's kind of hard to say exactly how well it will do. I'm going to put it in the C tier though. Ordinarily, I would put it in the D tier, but I'm putting it in the C tier. That's a buff for sure. Until I see more of this Pokemon, I can't really put it any higher. Being 4 times weak to ice is not great at the moment. Not being a grass type that doesn't resist water, not great at the moment, in my opinion. It has some things going for it for sure, but I just can't justify putting it any higher until I see more from it. I would love to be proven wrong though. I would love to be proven wrong. It's certainly not a bad Pokemon. Like, I feel like everything in the C tier you could use, you just might not have that much success with it, but it is usable. Torterra is usable. It's just not, I don't think it's gonna, my impression is that it won't make games easy for you to win. Infernape. Let's put Infernape in the B tier. It's a good support Pokemon because it actually is, it has fast fake out and it also hits pretty hard with its offensive moves. So it's like fake out, close combat, overheat, and then one move of your choice. And that's pretty solid, to be honest. It's not great, but it also gets priority Vacuum Wave, which is really strong against Chen-Pao because Chen-Pao is 4 times weak to fighting. So I think it has a niche. It also gets Mach Punch as well. I do think that it has a niche here. I don't think it's like broken, but I also don't think that it's very bad. Definitely usable, like a lot of the Pokemon in the B tier. Empoleon, I'm going to put in the B tier as well. Empoleon's another Pokemon that received a pretty massive buff with its hidden ability changing from Defiant to Competitive. This is a huge buff, but Empoleon again would have been D tier before. I'm putting it in the B tier now. I do think Milotic is still better than it. I don't think that it gets access to Scald, which is a pretty major issue, to be honest. However, it has better defensive typing. Steel is pretty nice at the moment. Leaf has a higher special attack stat than Milotic, though I'm not entirely sure. I don't really think that it is better than Milotic, but I do think that it's easier to use now compared to when it had Defiant. So I'll be generous and put it in the B tier. Ambipom, I'm going to put it in the C tier. I don't think this thing is good, to be honest. I don't really see what it has going for it other than like Technician Fake Out and I don't know, maybe some other kind of cheesy stuff. Maybe you can run like Technician Loaded Dice Double Slap or something and have it hit 4 or 5 times. But on the whole, this Pokemon is gimmicky and not great. Because it does Fake Out and it's relatively fast and relatively strong, I'm putting it in C tier, but it's maybe belongs in the D tier. Yanmega, I'm putting in the C tier. I like Yanmega. I wish it was better. It has a lot going for it. Tinted Lens is a really good ability. Speed Boost is a really good ability. The problem with Yanmega is just that its stats are really bad. And so even though it has a lot going for it, it just doesn't, it really can't compete with some of these stronger Pokemon, especially like with Yanmega. A lot of the times you want to be reusing like Detect because of Speed Boost, but with Urshifu in the format, and the ability for it to KO you ignoring Focus Sash, it's just a problem, I think, to be honest, for Furion Mega. So C tier is generous in my opinion. Gliscor, another Pokemon that I unfortunately brought to the World Championships. I'm going to put it in the C tier. I don't think it's very good. Like, it has enough going for it that it doesn't belong in the C tier, but I can't really see anybody doing well with it, to be honest. Did I say it doesn't belong in the C tier? I mean, it doesn't belong in the D tier, but D tier is maybe being generous. Yeah, like, it's hard to imagine this thing keeping up with, like, Urshifu and Chien-Pao and Fluttermane, all of whom have a supremely good matchup against it. So, yeah, Gliscor not going to be doing very well. Mamoswine, another Pokemon that I think belongs in the B tier. Mamoswine's now immune to Intimidate, which is really nice, and Ice and Ground typing is really good offensively. It's basically not fast enough to be a fast and offensive sweeper, but it's not bulky enough to be a tanky Pokemon either. I think it's a Pokemon that could really benefit from the snow. It'll make it really physically bulky. I think a lot of its matchups in the format don't look great. Like Chien-Pao has Sacred Sword, Urshifu has Surging Strikes, Fluttermane is a special attacker that kind of just booms it, but it's not a bad Pokemon by any means, and I think that it has some stuff going for it, so I'm going to put it in the B tier. Probopass, I think actually belongs in the D tier. Its stats are pretty decent, but it doesn't really do anything with them because it's all in like the bulky stats. So Dusknoir, let's pretend that this is Dusclops because Dusclops is better. Dusknoir goes in the C tier. Dusclops goes in the B tier, so we'll put it in the B tier. Bulky Trick Room Setter. The thing is that like Dusclops really shone when Cresselia wasn't in the format, and now that Cresselia is in the format, I don't really see Dusclops having a lot of success, to be honest, but it's still a very bulky Trick Room Setter with the Ghost typing, which is different than Cresselia. So yeah, maybe it can do something. Yeah, it also gets Will-O-Wisp, so I don't think it's a bad Pokemon. I think you could have some success with Dusclops, but I think typically Cresselia is going to be viewed as better. Conkeldurr. I love Conkeldurr. I was really excited when it was back, but I'm putting it in the B tier because it's hard to imagine Conkeldurr having much success now that Iron Hands is a thing. Like, when you want to use a bulky fighting type Pokemon with Drain Punch, typically in the past, your option has been like, Conkeldurr has been the best one. Maybe you want to use Hariyama, which is a little bit more offensive and frailer. Maybe you want to use Scrafty, which is tankier and doesn't hit as hard, but for the most part, Conkeldurr has kind of been that niche for a long time. With Iron Hands, like, there's just not really a reason to use Conkeldurr over it, in my opinion. Yes, you get Mach Punch, which is great, but you also lose access to Fake Out, which is kind of lame. So Conkeldurr is one of my favorite Pokemon of all time. I really love it. I just don't see it having that much of a niche with Iron Hands running around. Leaveney, dog water, nothing going for it. Swanna, not good, very bad. Mienshao, another Gen 5 fighting type, putting that in the B tier. Mienshao is not a bad Pokemon. It has Inner Focus, which means you can't intimidate it. It has Fake Out, it has Wide Guard, it has Feint. It used to have a niche because it was really good into Incineroar. It was like used with Calyrex Shadow because Calyrex Shadow pretty good into most things that weren't Incineroar, and then Mienshao great into Incineroar. It plays better with more offensive pieces. Like, you could use it with Fluttermane, I guess, with like Fake Out, Close Combat, Helping Hand, Wide Guard maybe, or I don't know, maybe something else. Quick Guard for Sucker Punch and Urshifu and stuff. But I don't think that in the current format it's super strong, but it has a niche and it has some stuff going for it, especially if you give it a Focus Sash. It can really, you know, survive 2 hits and then like, yeah, like contribute with like strong offensive fighting type damage. So yeah, I think that it's certainly not bad, but I don't think it will be seeing a ton of play. Mandibuzz, I think, is better than Mienshao personally, but it fills a very different role. The thing is that Mandibuzz was pretty good in 2017 because it's a really bulky Tailwind setter that can use Roost and Foul Play and just typically be annoying. It can use Taunt. I don't know if it still gets Toxic. I know they just added Toxic back as a TM, so that might be something that it can do. But the thing is that at the moment, the pace of the game is just very accelerated compared to back in 2017, where yes, there were Z moves, but they're also like Pokemon like Chien-Pao and Fluttermane, both of whom hit Mandibuzz for super effective damage, and even Urshifu. These Pokemon just cause the game to like be so damage oriented, and a lot of the meta Pokemon are just strong into Mandibuzz. I mean, I mentioned Urshifu, Chien-Pao, and Fluttermane, Iron Hand. Like, I mean, it has some positive matchups like Rillaboom and Amoonguss and Cresselia, but for the most part, like, Mandibuzz has a lot going for it, but I think it has a very bad matchup spread into the metagame right now, so I'm putting it in B tier. Trevenant, C tier. I like Trevenant a lot, but its main niche is as a Trick Room setter, which has some other things that it can do, such as Will-O-Wisp, Forest Curse, I don't know, maybe some other stuff as well. Horn Leech is like, we use a grass as an offensive type, which is good in certain metagames. It's really hard to justify using Trevenant now that we have Cresselia. Vikavolt, C tier. I don't think Vikavolt is new. I'm not rating Vikavolt. I don't think that's new. I think that is been existing. Rabombi, C or B? I'm gonna put it in the C tier. Rabombi's main niche was actually Pollen Puff for a while, but now Amoonguss and all these other Pokemon get Pollen Puff, so Fairy and Bug typing is not that good. Like, if you want a Fairy type, use Fluttermane. If you want Pollen Puff, use Amoonguss. It has like Quiver Dance and stuff, but it's not good enough to justify using, I think. So C tier, and yeah, that might be being a little generous. Como, oh, I'm putting this in the B tier. I have some secret tech with Como that I figured out that I'm excited to showcase at some point. I think this thing is interesting. It's an interesting spot. So for anyone who doesn't know, Como was pretty decent in 2017 and 2018 thanks to its signature Z move, and didn't really see a lot of play in Sword and Shield because of Dynam. It didn't really benefit from Dynamax since 4 times weak to Fairy, and Togekiss was on like every team for a while. With Terastallization, it can turn off its 4 times Fairy weakness, and it has a couple of signature moves which are very interesting. So I think this Pokemon could win a tournament. I do personally kind of believe in it, and I'm kind of curious to see how it does. I don't think that it's broken. I don't think it will ever be like one of the main teams, especially since it's very weak to both Flutter Mane and Chen Pao. However, I do think that it has a lot going for it. It's immune to Moongeist. It has multiple good abilities, like Bulletproof and Overcoat, and even Soundproof is good depending on certain, like what's popular in the metagame. So yeah, so I think that it's B tier at worst. Cramorant, C tier. I love Cramorant so much. I think it might be a D tier Pokemon. It's so funny. It just isn't very good. Like the stats are so bad. Its ability rocks, but it's not like it can't keep up in the current format. Maybe in Series A, it could have kept up, but at the moment, there's no way. Morpeko is C tier. It's not a bad Pokemon. I've actually had some surprise. I got to #1 in the world with it very many years ago at this point, and I was really impressed by it. Like Electric and Dark is pretty good typing. The ability to boost its speed is good. The current format is just too powerful. It cannot keep up, I don't think. Last but not least, Bloodmoon Ursaluna. I'm going to put this in the A tier. I don't think that it's an S tier Pokemon, but I do think it's an A tier Pokemon. This thing is interesting. It's going to be a pain in the butt to get like with the right IVs as a starter. They're not really relevant to discussing its viability, but yeah, I don't really know what to make of this thing, especially since we already have an Ursaluna, and it's not clear to me when you would want one versus the other, especially given how strong regular Ursaluna is. But a normal type Pokemon with a 140 base power move with a very limited drawback, with Hyper Voice, with Earth Power, with a whole host of other good moves, that has an ability that allows it to hit ghost types and can't have its accuracy dropped and ignores opponents' evasion. It's not lower than A tier. I'm not comfortable putting it in the S tier just yet, but I am feeling like A tier is a fair placement, and it could even move up depending. It's kind of hard to get a good read on how good it actually is kind of how I feel. Like it's everything feels speculative right now, so I could see it moving up. I couldn't really see it moving that much further down than A tier, but maybe maybe it just never finds a niche. Maybe it's always better to run regular Ursaluna. It's kind of hard to say, but I think it's a really interesting Pokemon, and I am very curious to see how players figure out how to use it. And that's my tier list. Again, I haven't played that much with most of these Pokemon, but I feel like my instincts are pretty good here for the most part. But I'm curious what you all think. Is there anything you think is out of place? Is there anything you think is too high, too low? Let me know in the comments. And yeah, I'm excited to use some of these brand new Pokemon.